In this video, we're going to look at percents and finding percents. So first, recall what percent means, and that is that percent means out of 100. So 25%, or 23% rather, is 23 out of 100. And so we can write a percent by a fraction, and then you can use a proportion to solve a percent problem. So this is a kind of a foolproof method to find a percent. It's not my favorite. I like the second method better, but this is one way you can do this. This is the idea of like it's is over of. I would say do the part over the total. So A over B is equal to P over 100, where A is the part of the base B and P over 100 or P percent is the percent. Okay, so anytime you have a math definition like this, it's pretty tough to work through. And pretty tough to understand without seeing an example. So read the definition, usually kind of quickly the first time, and then try to work some examples out, which we'll do now. And then if you need to go back to the definition, you can. So we want to know what percent of 20 is 15. Okay, so we got to kind of figure out what they're asking for, and then always identify the part and the total. So we're going to do part over total for our proportion. Okay, so what percent of 20 is 15? So 15 is the part. This would be like 15 out of 20. Another way to kind of shortcut is you always do is over of. Is another shortcut for writing these proportions. So the part is 15. The total is 20. The percent part, I don't know. And the total is 100. And then we can cross multiply and solve. Okay, so then we get 100 or 1,500 is equal to 20x, and then x is equal to 75. And so that is 75%. You should be able to do this a little more quickly, though, or you should practice doing this more quickly than that. And what I want you to be able to do is to just think, well, if I want to find a percent, I divide the part by the total. So you could also think, okay, well, part over total, 15 over 20. I know 15 over 20 is equal to 0.75, and that's written as a decimal. To turn that decimal into the percent, you multiply it by 100 or just move the decimal 2 spots to the right. So 1, 2, this means this is 75%. So it's very useful to be able to do this problem both ways. Okay, B, what number is 30% of 90? So what number is 30%? So that's our part, 30 over 100. And then of 90, that implies that 90 is the total on bottom. So we want to know what number is 30% of 90, so x goes here. And then cross multiply, so you get 100x is equal to, it'd be 2,700. And divide by 100, and you get x is equal to 27%. Okay, so we can do this with the ratio. Also, like, and we'll talk about this next, but if you find 30% of 90, if you want to find a percent of a number, you just multiply the number by the percent, or the total, I should say, by the percent. So if I do 90 times 0.30, then I get, I'm running out of space there, then I get 27. Let's move this up. Or I get 0.27, sorry. And then I can change that to a percent by moving the decimal 2 spaces to the right. Okay, this says 81 is 54% of what number? Okay, so 81 is 54% of what number? So 54 is my percent. That's over 100. So that's my part over total. And then we want to know 81 is the part, and of what number, so my total I don't know. Okay, so then we can cross multiply. 81 times 100 is 8100 or 8100 is equal to 54x. And divide by 54, and you get 150. Another thing with these percent problems is practice making sure your answer makes sense. So 54%, and just to do this with estimation, like it'd be good to build a number since we can estimate these things. Well, 54%, that's about half. So 81 is about half of what number? Well, if it take it times 2, that's 162. So it should be around 162 or 160 if you want to estimate even a little more. So 150 makes sense. A lot of times with these percent problems, if you make a mistake and like flip the fraction somewhere, you'll get a number that doesn't make sense. Even like look back at this first one, so 75%, so 15 over 20. If you look at that, 15 is not, it's not quite 220, but it's close. So it's less than 100%, but it's also more than 50%. So 75% does make sense. Okay, so this kind of is the other way of solving these, or this is the other way of solving these. And this is I think the preferred method because it allows you to think a little bit more about what's happening with the percent each time. It also allows you to solve these problems a little quicker, which is a plus as you get further along in your math career. So we get this idea where if you can represent if A is P percent of B by using the equation, A is equal to percent times B, where A is the part of the base and P is the percent. So this is the part here, and this is the total. And so if you want to find the percentage part, then you multiply. So using this method, what percent of 56 is 49? So what percent of 56 is 49? Then I know that, well, actually, let's use the whole equation. 49 would be the part. And then the percentage I don't know, so let's use P for that. And then 56. And then after this first step or using this equation, I want you to try to memorize this shortcut or know this shortcut. So if you divide by 56 on both sides, you get 49 over 56. And a lot of students are pretty used to seeing this because this is how you find like what percent you got on a quiz or test, right? So P is about 0.82 is what we'll round to, make sure I round correctly, yeah. And so then move the decimal 2 places, and that's 82%. And so if you got 49 out of 56 on a test, you got an 82%. B says, what percent of 55 is 11? So now let's do this quicker, right? Like you shouldn't need to write this out. What percent of 55 is 11? That would be 11 over 55. And that is 0.2, I believe. 0.2, and we'll keep 0.20. And so that is 20%. When you multiply by 100, or really the shortcut you need to know is just move the decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, this is the hard version. What number is 45%? Or no, sorry, this isn't the real tricky one. Oh, it's not simple. But 45% of 92. So if I want to know the percentage of the total, then you multiply. So this is just plugging into that equation. 0.45 times 90 will give you the amount. So what is 45% of 92? We'll move the decimal. You got to make sure you write that percent as a decimal and then multiply. And then we'll talk about So this is 40.5. And then check to make sure your answer makes sense. So if it were 50%, it would be whatever half of 92 is, which is 46, I believe. And so it's got to be less than 50%, or it's going to be close to that. The other shortcut you can use to help you with percentages is a trick to find 10% of 92 is just to move the decimal one place to the left. So 10% of 92 is 9.2, or about 9. So 20% would be about 18. 30% would be about, 27. And 40% would be about 36. And so 45 should be a little more than that. So you can count by 10%, which is a nice little shortcut for knowing, or I guess for a trick for estimating. And then this says, what number is 140% of 50? So the 140%, anything over 100 is kind of tricky, but it would just be as a decimal 1.4 is how you write that. We'll keep the 40, and then times 50. And then just multiply those. And you get 70. So 140%, it should be bigger than the total. And because it's over 100 and it's 40% bigger, is kind of where that extra 20 comes from. 65 is 62.5% of what number? So now you're looking for the total. So this is the one where it gets a little tricky, I think, to remember, right? So if you know, like up here, you're going to divide 49 over 56. This one, you have the percentage and the total, so you multiply. But here you want to know the 65 is the total. So you don't have that. So a good way to think of it is of what number, let's call that number X. So if I multiply 0.625 times X, I should get 65. And so now you're dividing. X is equal to 65 divided by 0.625. And so you get 104. A good idea to check your work would just be to say, well, okay, so 65 divided by 104, is that actually 62.5? And it is. And then F, and if you haven't paused the video, do so. Try this one on your own. This is a similar situation where I don't know the number. So what number? Let's call that X. I'll do 1.25 times X is equal to 50. 50 is 125% of what number? And so you divide 50 divided by 1.25, and you get 40. And that makes sense because 50 over 40 is 125. Okay, so let's look at this word problem. In a school transportation survey of 225 students, 18 of the students surveyed they said to walk to school. What percentage of the students walk to school? So relate this to something you know, or put yourself in the situation, right? If you were counting the kids, there's 225 students, and you count that 18 of them walk to school. And you want to find what percent of the students walk to school. So this is the part over total, or the is over of. So 18 is the part, and 225 is the total. So simply divide those. So 18 divided by 225, you know that's how you find a percentage. And let's type that in. 18 divided by 225 is 0.08. And I'm glad this came up because we haven't talked about this. If it's a single percentage, so 0.08, you move the decimal over two spaces, and that's 8%. And then just keep in mind, if you were to write 8% as a percentage, you would have moved the decimal twice, and it'd be 0.08. If you wanted to do the is over of thing, you could say X or the part over total. X is the percentage. And we don't know the percentage, so it's X over 100. But we know 18 is the part and 225 is the total. And then you can cross multiply and solve for 8%. And you're here. And that makes sense. Make sure your answer always makes sense. So 225, well, 10% of 225 would be 22.5. So 18 is a little less than 22. So 18 should be a little less than 10%. And there's that. So good luck with percentages. These are tough. Use those estimation strategies when and where you can. Practice those. It'll take some time to get good at that. But good luck and reach out if you have questions.